Hey everybody, Dean, Seer Performance again. I realized making all the Holly videos and stuff that I've never actually talked about our S10 that the Holly Terminator X went on, like the setup, motor, all that stuff. So we're going to do a little walkthrough and kind of go over what the truck started as to what it is now, and hopefully some future plans for it down the road, maybe over the next year. So I got everything ready and we'll go over it real quick. So it's a 99 S10 and it started out as kind of a buddy of mine. He has a pool cleaning company, and that's what it started out as, was like a pool cleaning truck. And it was white, just your run-of-the-mill S10 work truck. So we actually decided one day, it was kind of a spare and just sat around, and we decided one day we wanted to build something. So we grabbed it and snatched the motor out of it and the dashboard and just started tearing into it. And being that I own a plumbing company as well and he owns a pool repair company, we decided to do it where there's no money out of pocket. So we do a lot of scrap, like water heaters. For me, it's water heaters, copper tubing, bunch of stuff. And for him, same thing. He does a lot of pool heaters, so you get a bunch of scrap money out of those, and so on and so forth. So, we started collecting all the scrap and everything. And next thing you know, our first run was, $3,500 or something like that. And the next run was, another $2,500 or whatever it was. So we just started ordering parts, and I had gotten a 5.3 from a friend of mine with a 4L60, and probably not a great idea, but we got the truck running. It had low compression on 2 cylinders. The 4L60 didn't shift, so that was pretty cool. We ended up swapping it with them for a 4L80, which is much more preferable as far as street, like cruiser type deal. And that's what we wanted to do, is kind of a street drag truck that we could cruise to Daytona or whatever. So we originally started on the stock ECU and started doing some tuning on it, and it just never ran right. We did do the twin turbo setup on it, and I built the manifolds for the exhaust. And like I said, it never ran right. So once we got it kind of tuned, street tuned, and we made 1 or 2 hits with it, really low boost, like 6-7 pounds, it actually like folded the rings. It may have butted the rings, I don't know, but they had a pretty big gap on them, like 30 thousandths on the top, and I think it was like a 28 on the bottom, or vice versa. I don't remember what it was at the time, but it ended up folding the rings up the side of the piston, messed that motor all up, a few cylinders actually. So we pulled that motor, and I have a lot of resources, so I called one of my friends, sort of friend, acquaintance, and asked him if he had any 6 liters. And he said he had one that was a core, like a return. He's a junkyard, so he had it as a return. So I went and I picked it up and looked at it. The block was good, the crank was good, the rods looked good. I pulled the heads, and the heads had looked like somebody took a handful of BBs and tossed them in the cylinders, every single cylinder. So the heads were trashed, the piston tops were trashed. So we ended up getting another set of pistons and rods, put the motor together, didn't really check any bearing clearances or anything like that, just did the rings. Motor spun over good, it ran really good until, I put probably 200 or 300 street miles on the truck, and obviously tuning it and stuff like that, so quite a bit of miles on the truck. And then we took it to the track, first time at the track, and we didn't push it hard. We were going like 1120s, at about 124 mile an hour. So we were leaving really soft and just kind of getting a feel for it. Little shakedown runs, really, really low boost. And on the second run, it at the timing booth where you get your ticket, it shut off, which I was having a lot of idle issues with it and stuff. But it shut off, and then it wouldn't even turn over. So we started tearing it down at the track, but then, once you get past like pulling the valve covers and, trying to turn it over and pulling the valve train and trying to turn it over and going through all that, it kind of becomes not worth it to do it at the track when you don't have all the parts to repair it anyways. So we brought it home, pulled the motor out of it, pulled the pan, and immediately the number one crank bearing, main bearing, had spun. So, that was kind of the end of that. Trashed the crank, trashed the rod. So I found a set of Gen 4 rods, another Gen 3 crank. Had the crank balanced with the rods, pistons. Did all new bearings, new cam bearings. Put it together. Actually, my son put this together. He was 17 at the time, and it's the first motor he's ever put together. So I kind of stood by, watched him. He helped me file the rings. We went through everything. He did pretty much everything, and I just kind of stood around and guided him, helped him, whatever. And we put the motor in, and this is the motor that's been in it now for almost 2 years, which is it's never run right, and that's not due to anything to do mechanically. It was the old the gold box that we had a couple bad injector drivers, unfortunately. So, it's a 6-liter stock bore. It's Gen 4 rods and pistons, stock, Gen 3 crank. It has a Brian Tooley Stage 2 twin turbo cam. The heads are 317s. They're stock. It's got the Brian Tooley 660 springs, dual springs with the titanium pieces. It's got the Brian Tooley, I believe they're 3/8 push rods. Just kind of his standard push rod that he sells in the kit. It's got the trunnion upgrade on the rockers, and that's actually a cheap knockoff one that I got off of Amazon, or it might have been Summit. That might have been a Summit one, but they seem to be holding up pretty good. I heard a lot of bad things about them. And then we ordered a Jegs 12-point cage, I believe, which I don't like. It doesn't have a very good fit. The bars were a little short, so you can kind of see here where the halo kind of drops back, leans down toward the back where it attaches in the main hoop, which it just is ridiculous to me that the main hoop bars were not long enough to actually go through the floor to the frame, which is how the kit is meant to be. It does come with the plates, the floor plates, and everything, but I'm preferable. I run to the frame on the main hoop. The strut bars, the front strut bars, I run to the frame. So it dropped it. A couple inches. Not you're not dropping a ton, but it was enough that it screwed up the halo, which will all be getting redone. The door bars, all that's good. The dash bar is a little funny. It needs a couple extra supports. I bent the front tubes that run out to the front frame rails. I decided to do an X bar in the back. But yeah, that's was pretty much the gist of it. Getting the cage in. It was a hurry up right before we took it to the track. The first time we went to the track before the engine blew up. So we were, pressed for time, hurried up, and shipping was terrible and everything with it. But, it's a short bed. The 6-liter setup is by choice, probably one of the better setups you can get. Pretty much everything that accessory wise, like you have to build or buy for any kind of turbo kit and stuff, I fabricated like the log manifolds, the downpipes. We just actually redid those. They used to come out the fender. You can see over here, you see all the big holes. That was the exhaust and the wastegate came out there, which was kind of cool. I mean, I've been through several different configurations on the exhaust. The old steel hood, they used to come out the hood. Then the wastegates came out the hood, and then I changed that, and the wastegates used to come out, just in front of the tire. Then they came out behind the tire, and then I decided to just do the shortest run for the exhaust and come out the fender there. But I've fabricated everything for that. The fuel rails are like cheap fuel rails that you get on Amazon, the cheap kits. Then the little brackets I made for the coils, which are like throw together, just junk laying around. So I can pull a couple of nuts, have the coils thrown off. I don't have to unbolt them for the valve covers. I did smooth the valve covers down so they don't have those bolt holes anymore. Our intention is to relocate the coils possibly to the back firewall eventually. And then, it cleans it up a little bit. Little by little by little, I've been doing a little more and more and more. I moved the alternator down to like where the AC compressor used to sit. I made a bracket to mount it, and then I made a tensioner. I don't know if you can see it. It's way down in there. You can't really see it. It made a tensioner on a couple rod ends. One's left hand, one right hand. So you turn it one way, and it'll adjust it out or in, whichever way. I cut the stock alternator power steering bracket, and then I just made a little bracket to mount the. It's actually a tensioner pulley, but it's acting as an idler pulley. But I like the tensioner pulley because it has the grooves and it has the lips, so the belt doesn't walk off one way or the other. It's kind of a long run across. Made up some spacers, bolted that on, so that works good. The power steering has a smaller pulley. If you remember the S10 frames, the power steering pulley on an LS hits the power steering gearbox on the frame. Well, that's not there anymore, but it was, and I had done a smaller pulley, which works good. It's fine. And then the wastegates have been moved several different times, and they're kind of butchered, so all of that needs to be redone. That's kind of next on the list. The turbo compressor side, the charge side, sorry, used to just come off the compressor and right to the intake. Really short little pieces. And then a couple friends gave me some air-to-water intercoolers, so I had mocked up this piping, and there was an air-to-water intercooler down there. And of course, once it was all done, like a dummy, I didn't test the air-to-water intercooler. I didn't put water in it. I didn't put any air on it, so kind of my fault. When I put it on the truck and parked it, I had noticed there was water coming out of the blow-off valves, both sides. It was just trickling out little by little. So when I pulled the charge pipe, I noticed the entire intake was full of water. Luckily, it didn't get up to the throttle body because I do have the Holley kind of lower manifold. And then it used to have the big red elbow that I had made out of aluminum sheet. But now I did some aluminum 4-inch, just kind of pie cut them, made a base plate. It's like the 4150 style. Carburetor flange, base plate, and I made that. I just redid that actually last week, and it pushed the throttle body back some, which I kind of like better. So I ended up cutting that intercooler out and just sticking a piece of straight tube in there, and that kind of mates it all together. The intake temps stay fairly, sitting here idling for 30 minutes, they'll get up to 110, but once you drive it, they go down. On cooler days like today, it's 70 maybe outside, so the intake temps will go down to about 80 or something. So it's not too bad. The turbos are on 3 performance. They're the 70 millimeter journal style turbos with custom broken impeller wheels on both sides from where it sucked vacuum hoses in. That were hooked to the wastegates, so that was pretty neat. But on the front end, like I talked about in one of the other videos, this is like a Heights independent front suspension kit for 56 GMC or 55 Chevy pickup truck the whole year, 55 to 59 or something like that. So I have the 56, which is in videos coming soon. And I had the parts, so I cut the front of the truck off and took some 2x3 square tube, welded it into the existing frame rails, plated them so they're strong, and that's when I did the front bars, the front roll bars that come to the cage, and mounted them onto the frame rail there. It's got the upper and lower control arms, or tubular control arms. So that's that. It's got a turbo 400 with BTE Pro Billet trans brake, which for the money you pay like $450 for that trans brake setup. And I personally, I think it's phenomenal. So that's the turbo 400. It's a little leaky. It's got a stock pan. And then we have the Summit sells a torque converter. I believe it's a 9.5 inch torque converter. It's like $360 or something like that. I can't remember. It says it's good to 850 horse. It hasn't been too bad, but considering the truck has never really been like under full power, yeah, I don't know if it's gonna hold. The oil pan is off of Amazon. It's kind of like a Moroso style oil pan, and then it has the oil filter relocation kit. It's mounted up front with dash 10 line running to and from it. The rear end is pretty much a stock, I guess you could say stock, Ford 88 rear end with 373s. The stock limited slip diff is still in it. The axles are Mosier street axles, so they're a little bit better. And then we got some $50 Facebook Marketplace score QA1 single adjustable shocks, coilovers. So that's pretty good. Kept the stock 488 brakes, and the axles are drilled for the Chevy lug pattern, the 5 by 4 3/4, I believe. The 4-link, I actually built the 4-link. I bought some 3/4 Heim joints, and I had the, I believe that it's 1.25 3/16 wall. I can't remember exactly. It's been so long since I did that. But I built the 4-link, the brackets, the panhard bar. I built all out of everything cheap. So the 4-link ended up costing me, I think it was like $120, which you could spend, $250-ish on a 4-link setup and it's done for you. But I like fabricating. I like building stuff that I don't have to buy. If I could build it, why buy it? The crappy brake line that needs to be redone. Then I relocated the radiator to the bed about a year ago. We had a little accident where the straps on the back of the truck broke, and when I hit the brake on the van that I was towing with, the truck had slammed into the front of the trailer and busted up the whole front end, and twisted the radiator all up. So a friend of mine had come up and he helped me rebuild the front end, do like the square tube that holds all the grill and the bumpers at the top, blah blah blah. He helped me redo all that. So we threw a radiator, got a radiator off a buddy of mine. It's a pretty big radiator, actually. It's I think it's a 4-row. I can't remember, to be honest with you. 2-row, 3-row, 4-row, I don't even know. I don't even know what brand it is. It's got Northern stamped on the side, I don't even know. But I relocated that in the back, and then what I did was, instead of trying to run like rubber hoses or something like that, I do a lot of fabrication for a bunch of different companies. So I had a bunch of this aluminum tubing, and it's this one here I believe is inch and a half OD aluminum, and then I got silicone couplers with T-bolt clamps, and like 90s and 45. So like this is just a little piece of straight pipe that goes down. There's a 90 down there, a silicone 90 down there. Then that pipe runs all the way up to the front, somewhere, oh, down there. And then there's a 90 silicone, a little piece, 90 silicone coupler there. The other side, the thermostat side, you know, I came out 90, little piece, 90, straight across, 90. But then I actually decided to roll the tube. And let me get the light again. Oh, of course, I left it all the way over there. It's way over here. We're going to go get the light. Need to get the light. All right. So, like I said, I do a lot of fabrication. So I have benders, rollers, a bunch of things like that. So actually, you can see right there that 2-inch aluminum tube, how it's rolled down below the frame, and then it's rolled again, and then there's a straight coupler there, so I can take it apart. It's not one continuous long loop. And then there's just a straight piece that comes back with a 90 down in there, and then up to another 45 for the bottom of the radiator. And knock on wood, that's worked flawless. I kind of made, I guess you can call it a catch can, but it's kind of not a catch can. But it's worked pretty good, which is kind of weird. So it's for the overflow, and I used AN lines. I drilled and tapped the radiator port a little bit bigger because it was like 1/8, and I tapped it for like 1/4 so I could put a dash 4. Ran a piece of dash 4 line, and then the cap is just a nice little $13 billet cap that comes with the plate, threaded plate, to weld into like a radiator or whatever you want to weld it into and use it for. But I built the box and I welded the cap on, and the cap is sealed, so there is nowhere really for the tank to expel, like any kind of overflow. But what I found with this is the 1 or 2 times that it ran like around 220, 230, I think it was 230, 240, something like that. I can't remember. It was at the track. What it did was the cap would push open and it would push fluid into that tank and then pressurize that tank. And then once it kind of cooled itself down, the tank would push the water back in as long as the cap was still open. So I haven't had any kind of cooling issues, knock on wood, since I put the radiator back here. And these are Escalade fans. They're much larger than this radiator, but these pull a ton of air, and they're cheap. I get them for anywhere from 25 to 40 bucks. So being that it's got the shroud is built in, everything's there, you just got to wire it. Some pick and pulls you can snatch the plugs for it. You just kind of clip down there where they go together. You can clip and get both plugs. I don't worry too much about it because they're just regular, they're male terminals sticking out, and you can just use the female crimps onto your wiring and push them on. And I made a couple of panels to kind of cover up the gap, pop rivet them on, and that's so it doesn't pull the air around the radiator, it pulls it through the radiator, and it works really, really good. I mounted just a regular, another cheap, it's not a Doral, this is a cheap Amazon transcooler, dual row, -6, in and out, comes with the fan. I think that thing's like 35 bucks or something cheap like that. And I, again, made a little bracket that bolts to the bed. And one of the brackets broke off of the actual cooler that mounts it to my bracket. So it wasn't a big deal. Throw a couple zip ties on it, you're good to go. Fuel cell, shout out to my buddy Ryan. I had that ATL there, and another shout out to my buddy Dean, who gave me that one, and it had you know, it had a bladder in it that wasn't rated for E85, and I didn't know nothing about those ATLs. Those are more like road course style fuel cells. So the first tank of E85 I put in, pump E85. About 2 weeks later, I had noticed, I come in and there was a puddle, and that's actually the stain from it right there. That stain right here is actually the E85 that had eaten the bladder out of the tank and started dripping through the fuel cell. So my buddy Ryan said he had 15-gallon, you know, whatever you want to call it, eBay special fuel cell. So I ran down, I grabbed that from him, and the top, I made the top because the ATL one didn't have one. This one actually bolts onto the ATL top, and then it has my vent, and it has a dash 8 feed that goes in, and actually there's a Y underneath, and then there's a bucket from that other fuel cell that sits back here, and both my Walbro 450s are in the bucket, and the bucket's baffled, so the fuel can get in, but it can't get out, blah, blah, blah. And then it has like AN line that runs up to the Y that then feeds, and that's Teflon braided hose. And then the Holley 100 micron, I believe, Dominator fuel filter. 10 micron. It's a 162570 10 micron. It's the Dominator fuel filter. It is expensive, but it's a very good filter, and it's rebuildable. And what I did was I welded the fittings. I'm not a fan of the rubber, like ORB fittings that screw in, and for some reason I just could not. I can never get them to seal. So I took and I cut the fitting, drilled out the hex cap a little bit so the fitting would fit in there a little bit smoother and lower profile down in it. And then I just TIG welded both sides so I don't have to worry about it leaking. If I ever wanted to upgrade, I can literally cut those ends off, put a dash 10, dash 12, whatever. So then the dash 8 runs all the way up front. From there, it runs all the way up front to, yet again, another Amazon buy, that fuel pressure regulator. It's like the $34, I don't know what brand, knockoff brand, billet regulator. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. The dash 8 runs to the rail back there. Runs to the back rail. You see the line comes across, runs to the back rail, comes to the front, and then another dash 8 feeds the back of that rail, comes up, and then dash 6 over to the cheapo regulator. Again, those are cheap fuel rails that I literally have held to the intake with threaded rod. I would like to get the Holley rails because every once in a while I have an issue with an injector will start leaking, like from the rail where it goes in. So I would like to get the Holley rails, but you know, that's something later on. Right now they're not leaking, knock on wood. But again, the rubber O-ring ORB right there on each end of the rail. For the life of me, I could not get them to seal, and that could be, you know, that every time I would tighten the fitting on, it would twist the rubber out or whatever. Sorry about the lighting. I keep moving it. I'm flailing my hands around. But anyway, so I took the fittings and I just welded them in. So 3 ends are dash 8 and 1 end is a dash 6. Again, if I ever want to upgrade, I can cut it off, put a bigger fitting in there. Not a big deal. So then it runs to the regulator. Then I do have the ethanol sensor. I used to have the content sensor hooked to the gold box, and it worked good. But I don't know if if it was a bad batch of Pump E, because the gas station no longer sells it, so it's kind of weird. They don't sell any gas, fuel, tobacco, or alcohol, so it's a little weird. Then their return just goes back regular, crap. Little $30 Bill Speedway Motors, whatever it is. Chrome 7-inch booster, so it doesn't hit the coil packs like all S10 have that issue. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of the whole truck. Tailgate I got rid of, kind of made that out of a piece of sheet and a couple pieces of square tube, just so it doesn't look so crappy from the back. Interior, the dash is gone, but it still has the headliner, still has the back panel, still has the rubber mat that comes, as a standard thing. Cheap seat, Facebook Market, paid 25 bucks for it, mounted it. Don't like it, especially because your crotch strap, there's nowhere for the crotch strap to come through, so it has to come all the way from the front, which, when your butt is somewhere back here, it makes the belt position really weird, and you can kind of slide around, so it's not the best. So we'll be upgrading that with a Kirky. Doors are gutted, poly windows all the way around that I made, bought a sheet of poly. And I think the one sheet of poly did all 4 windows, so it was pretty good. I think the sheet was I want to say 5x10. I think it was that sheet. The steering column, I made it out of some bar stock, some universal joints, and then the steering rod ends. And then I got that quick connect release adapter off of Amazon. Steering wheel has been on the truck for, no, this is a little bit of another Amazon buy steering wheel, and I made the adapter to go from the 3-bolt to the 6-bolt. I just used a piece of 1/2-inch aluminum plate, Loctited everything. I made the tabs for the 2-step bump and trans brake and 2-step. That's literally a dollar store phone cord. So it has 4 wires in it. Yeah, it looks a little janky, but all 4 wires are in it. So instead of having to spend, I don't know, whatever they are, 38 bucks or whatever on, the trans brake button that only has 2 wires in the coil. So you end up having to buy 2 of those. So you're at 70 bucks. I spent $1 in these little buttons, which I got to get a new one for this side. But my buddy Dean gave me this one, and they're on Amazon. They're like 10 bucks for a pair of these, and they're really, really nice aluminum buttons. They look really good. What else? Oh, I took out all the factory, like the brake pedal, clutch pedal mount. And for the steering column, I took all that out. This bracket was huge. It came from over here all the way to over here and bolted in right back here. I mean, the bracket it was a cast aluminum bracket, but the thing had to weigh 10, 15 pounds almost. So I just made a plate that goes against the firewall where the brake booster mounts, and then used some 3/16 flat stock, came out and remounted the brake pedal. You can kind of see it in there. Remounted the brake pedal in a good position. The gas pedal is a regular stock gas pedal. But yeah, I mean, it's not a fully gutted, race truck. It's pretty well gutted now. Little by little by little, more and more and more, keeps going. And then the best part for me, the best part of the entire truck, I'll keep the light with me, is the hood. I kind of bartered a deal with a buddy of mine, Zeus, and he needed exhaust header put on his car, and I wanted airbrush work done on the hood. So we bartered back and forth and ended up, I mean, the guy's killer at what he does. So he did it here at the shop and just blasted it out, and I'm super, super stoked about the hood. Hopefully you can see it pretty good. I just washed it again, and I know the lights are going to have a funny glare on it, but I mean, it just came out awesome. He did kind of, so my son came up with the idea of doing Thanos. He's some kind of god of, not Thanos from the Avengers. This is Thanos. He's like the god of death or something like that. From, I don't know, who knows, online thing. So he kind of took that image, which is kind of the image of Thanos that you can find. There's a bunch of different images, but that was kind of the one that I liked with the hood. I'm not a huge fan of skulls and stuff like that, but I just like that look of that one for a race truck. Well, he took that and just blew it out of the water. I mean, he didn't stencil it or nothing. This is all freehand. He hand drew, used black and white, and then he added in, like off to the sides over here. Oh, you can't see it. It's so glary. Sorry. There's, man, I don't know how I can get it in there. You can kind of see in here, there's trees that are like hidden kind of in the background of the picture, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And then he just took and did kind of these lightning bolt, sort of, not really lightning bolt waves. And then on this side, yeah, there you could, if I get that light right, okay, right in there, you can kind of see the trees where they come up, and they're just hidden off in the background. So the idea behind, sort of, everybody calls it a Grim Reaper, and that's fine if you want to look at it that way. But the idea of it is, now that we have the truck running good, I mean, we did really good. We were pretty competitive in the past with it not running good, running on like 6 cylinders, which sucks. But we were pretty competitive. We won a few events, and I'll probably add in a couple of pictures of us on the podium. So being that now that the truck should run better and that we should actually be able to control the boost, turn it up and all of that, we're really looking to take a lot more wins this season coming up, which hopefully they announce soon. Usually starts mid-March, end of March, somewhere around there. But super excited about it. And that's why I've been working on the truck so much, is to get it dialed in. I kind of had the boost control dialed in. No, not kind of. I had the boost control dialed in. I added CO2 to the truck right before the end of last year. I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place in this, but I added a CO2 bottle. Again, you can get these on Amazon, super cheap. And I've always had, this is a nitrogen regulator, which works for CO2. I changed the way it mounts to the bottle is a little bit different. On the nitrogen, it has more of a male adapter that goes in. This is CO2 has a female adapter, so you could buy this. I mean, this whole bottle cost me like $43. I made the mount, the bar mount. I made it out of 1/2-inch plate aluminum, drilled it, threaded it, did all that. Ran the push lock hose up along the frame, and then it teed off, and it went to both solenoids. And, oh, that's a horrible noise. And it worked. I got it working. I mean, I was at 25% duty cycle, and on the trans brake, I can make 15 pounds of boost. If I turned it up to 30% duty cycle, I was making 20 pounds of boost on the trans brake. I didn't drive the truck with that setup because the steering wasn't done. There was a bunch of little odds and ends that weren't done. But then finding out that it was only on 6 cylinders and having to hurry up and figure out, okay, is it the motor, is it the ECU, whatever. Well, it was the ECU, so we got rid of that, and then having to get the Holley system and get it on. Now the Holley controls boost a little bit different. I got to take a drink. Hold on. Sorry. But I do love my Yeti thermos. Not sponsored by Yeti. My daughter got this for me for Father's Day. Love it. It's awesome. But anyways, so the Holley controls boost a little bit different, being that they do dome pressure only. So it needs to read the dome pressure in order to adjust. So again, Sloppy Mechanics Matt Happel had the killer idea of stealing the map sensor signal as the input for the dome pressure sensor. Yeah, so you don't have to put like a transducer in there. So now your dome pressure sensor will read your actual boost. So now you can take your target boost and say if you want 10, you put your dome pressure at 10 all the way across, and that's what it gives you. The ECU sees that the map signal reads, whatever KPA, converts it to 10 PSI, and then it'll target that. But I have 2 Mac 3-port solenoids. So I had one over there, one over here. Each turbo had its own solenoid. And then those were fed with the CO2, then to the top of the dome. And then your compressor just fed to the bottom of the wastegate, like standard. And it worked. And it worked good. What I found now, and I'll go into more detail with it, is that it didn't work with the Holley, the Terminator X. I took the truck out, and I posted a little video of it, and you can hear it boost cuts. And I had my boost cut at about 23 pounds. I mean, it was almost instantaneously just boost cut, boost cut, boost cut, boost cut. So I played and played and played and played and played with settings, and I could not dial it in. And I went back in and I looked, and basically the way it's set up is it wouldn't work that way, or I was doing something wrong. So I said, okay, let's take and just do it the way Holley says to do it, and kind of go with what Matt Happel did. He changed to a 4-port Mac. He's single turbo, so he changed to a 4-port Mac, and he's got that figured out. So being that I had the 2 3-ports, what I did was you can kind of see, I tied them together to make more of a solenoid like Holley shows in all their documentations. So you have a fill and a vent solenoid. So now it has an extra signal, which I stole from the electric fans because I had no more outputs. Again, just the one downside to the Terminator X is you are limited on your inputs and outputs. 4 inputs, 4 outputs. That doesn't include like your tack signal, which is the blue and white striped wire that's in the harness, kind of laying out of the harness actually. And your fuel pump it's all separate wire. Your map, your external map, if you want to run a 2, 3, 5, 7 bar map, that's all on a separate plug. So you have 4 inputs and outputs. So I do have an electric shifter. I have the shift node. So I want the truck to shift consistent. I don't want to have to shift. I'm very inconsistent with shifting, and I shift very soon. I always short shift. I have a bad habit of that, usually around 52, 5300. So I want the truck to shift on its own. So I left that as an output. And then you got the trans brake, the bump box, 2-step, all those things. So I was out of outputs. I ran out of outputs. So I stole one from the fan. The fan, like my transmission fan, I have set to key on now. Before it had a switch in the back, and it was a pain in the butt remembering to turn that switch on. Like I said, I don't remember turning a lot of things on. So the electric fans, I think what I'm going to do is mount a switch in there. I don't know, maybe next to the ECU or next to the start button or power button or whatever. And I'll just have to remind myself, maybe put a sticker or a huge LED sign that says turn the fan on. So hopefully that won't be an issue. But the truck takes a while to heat up. Does it with the bigger radiator and the more lines? I think it's just so much capacity that it does take a while before it gets up around 190, 200 degrees. Which is, I had my fan set to come on at 195, and I mean it would take a while for them to come on. So now I stole that wire for the boost solenoid. Like I said, I'll go into another detail, but that's pretty much what the truck is, where it's at. Right now it's got a radial tire, but I have the slicks are back there. They're pretty big. They're 29 and a half or 29. What are you? 29 and a half, 11 and a half, 15. Mickey Thompson ET drags, and the truck hooks. That's what actually broke the leaf springs and the traction bars. Was the first time out on these slicks. 2 launches, broke everything. So those work really good. We're gonna try and get a set of 28, 10 and a half, 15s, so we can do more of the small tire competitions that they've started running at the track Sebring, where we race, the Sebring International. It's 8th mile. So, but that's pretty much everything with the truck. There are a lot more changes to come, like carbon fiber stuff. We want to do carbon fiber front end, whether it be one piece or individual pieces. I really want to do it as a one piece. I just don't know how much of a nightmare that one piece front end will be. I need to get a Kirky seat, change that so I'm safer in the truck and better position. Other than that, I mean, the truck is ready to go, and I'm itching to get it out. So I think we're gonna probably run either Orlando or Bradenton. We're trying to work a deal possibly with a buddy of mine who kind of runs the Sebring events. We're gonna hopefully get in contact with him in the next week or so and see if we can't do kind of a private test session at the track, and that would be awesome. Like to have that to myself, and be able to focus on what I'm supposed to do and not somebody else pulling up next to me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you want to see? You want to see more videos like this, me yakking? Do you want to see, more drag racing videos? I have a bunch of drag racing videos in the playlist. If you look in our playlist, Sebring, I believe, I have a bunch of drag races in there, mostly of the S10. But like, subscribe if you would, please. It helps me out, especially if you like the video, or leave a comment. Lets me know you appreciate, or at least you're into what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do. So it makes me want to do more of these videos. And drag race is what I love to do. It's my passion, building, fabricating, all that stuff. It's my passion. I want to share it. So if you do me a favor, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I really appreciate it. So that's it for now. We'll be back. Next video, hopefully, it'll be on the scales at the dyno. So make sure to come back, check us out, hit the subscribe and the little bell. It'll notify you when we put new videos. All right, thank you.